Today I'm talking about the Doctor Who CCG. Not the Doctor Who card game that came out fairly recently. They have several sets for it. Not about the customizable card game, the full-on trading card game. The first thing here you want to note, card type, is what we have here called a Watcher card. And these, you'll notice, have a support number and then a substance number and energy number, and then of course the name and then a picture. Now the picture doesn't make any sense. Some of the choices in artwork, I will admit, also didn't help the game. And the Watcher cards are examples because I have no idea what the heck this is. Except it's supposed to be a basic creature. But I can ignore the really fundamentally flawed art in that respect. I can ignore that because, again, I like the game. But anyway, so that's what they call a Watcher. It's basically a default 1/1 creature. A default creature that you're going to have at your timeline so that you don't automatically defenseless in any given on the game board. So, like other games I reviewed, this one does have a game board. It's a very simple game board. It's a lot simpler. The only one that comes close to it in simplicity for game board design would be that sort of Spycraft pseudo game board where you have the mission queue between both players and you sort of move to the mission queue. So it's sort of a game board in that sense. So this one does have a game board, but it's even simpler than that. It's extremely simple. But anyway, so you're going to have these cards. You're going to have one in 3 different colors. You're going to have, let me just show you that. So here's green. Then there's a red one, and then blue. And those are sort of the 3 of the 4 color types you're going to have in the game. Green represents the past, red represents the present, and blue represents the future. And so those are important because those all play into the mechanics of the game. Alright, then you're also going to have sort of what marks or tracks your health in the game, and that sort of is literally your health. You're going to have 6 cards that make up sort of your health pile, and every time you take damage directly, so if he attacks at an area on the game board and you don't have someone there to defend, then the damage will hit you directly and you're going to lose one of these 6 cards. And so this is basically your health. You're going to have, by default is 6. You can up it if you want to make a longer game. If both players agree, you can have a larger stack if you just want to make the game go longer. But the normal is 6. And it's going to be 2 of each. So you're going to have 2 past, 2 present, and 2 future. And the time cards are, I could say the same thing about the time cards. The art wasn't the best choice for what they went with, just like the Watcher cards. I don't know why they did that, so here's an example of a time card. It's going to have, again, that really interesting funky art, and then say time on the bottom and have the appropriate border color. So you can have 2 of those, 2 past, 2 present, and 2 future in a default game. And that is going to track your health. You have creatures, and they're the main card type, really. The creatures are what you're going to use to attack and defend with. There's going to be types of creatures, so let me give you an example here. Actually, let me show you the first creature as an example, and actually that will actually explain everything. Okay, so as I said before, you have those 3 that I told you about, past, present, and future. The 4th color type is timeless. And that's important when I get to actually explaining how you play the game on this review. But here's a timeless creature, and it's actually a pretty popular one if you're familiar with the old series, but this is K9, a companion to Doctor Who. And you can tell because it says on the card, robot, assistant, and unique. Assistants are the companions. So anyone who was a companion to Doctor Who is an assistant. And then it says robot because it's a robot. You're going to have things like robot, alien, human as creature types. And then it says unique. So you can't have more than one of these out in play at any given time. And then of course it has the game text. And then of course, as you saw there, it has support, energy, and substance, the three numbers. It's a 1, 2, 2. 1 energy, 2 support, 1 support, 2 energy, and 2 substance. But that's important to remember. So that's an example of a creature. So let me get to the next card type. So you're going to have the creatures. And then the next card type you're going to have in the card game, in this game, is you're going to have something known as a resource. And a resource card is normally equipment. It's a basic equivalent of what you'd find as equipment. And I do have the TARDIS, which is pretty cool. So here's the TARDIS equipment card. Just want to make sure you can see that. This is just going to have the name of it, that it's a resource and its game effect. But there's a resource, a TARDIS. And you notice that on the TARDIS there it has a little symbol, a sort of infinity symbol, if you look there on the card. Okay. So what that means is that's an ability that's not automatic. You have to, in magic terms, tap or exhaust. I forget what term they use in this game, but the point is you tap the card and then you can use the effect. We have episode cards. And here's an example of an episode card. And here you see it has a purple border. It's got the name of the episode, game text, and also it'll have a number at the top, episode number. And this is a 9. It's kind of like an event in other games that I've reviewed. It's like an event. You play it, but it plays onto the table in one of the areas, past, present, or future, and will have an effect in that location. And your opponent is going to need to go ahead and have that much support to be able to activate or exhaust or tap, whatever term again you want to use, to be able to get rid of it. So this is a very high one. It's a 9. So this requires a lot of support. So there's, and when I get to the gameplay, I'll get to more specifics on it. So there's an episode card. And then the final card type in this game are flash cards, and they're basically interrupts. It's the same thing as an interrupt in the other games that I've played or reviewed. But here's a flash card. It has a yellow border. So it has the flash, the card type, the name, and the effect. And flash cards. And flash cards, just like interrupts, are very powerful cards. I mean, I have a good number of these in the deck because they're very effective, and they just flat out can do stuff, do fun things. But there you go. So those are the card types. And let me just go ahead and get into the card gameplay, and then my final thoughts. So this game, it's basically area control on a very simplistic term, a very simplistic means. And what I mean by that is your objective in this game is to be able to get to a point where you're controlling one or more areas, ideally all of them if you can just wipe your opponent off the board, but one or two areas, and be able to just start hitting your opponent at every turn and deplete their health. It only takes 6 hits to end the game normally, unless you play some card to get health back or something like that, or unless you're doing a larger game. But by default, you're only going to need to hit them 6 times. And that's not hard to do in this game, if you play it right or build the deck right, because it's a very simplistic game. So that's the point. You have the 6 areas. Your aim is to, again, knock out your opponent's health, control some areas with your characters. So it has a lot of feel to area control board games. It really does. In this game, you're going to have one time zone. So the different areas of the board are called time zones. Past, present, future. So every turn you're going to select what time zone is going to be your time zone for that turn. When you do that, it limits what your opponent can do, because your opponent can also only react using game effects in that chosen time zone during your turn. So if your opponent has an effect ready to go that he could do in the past, but you chose the present time zone, then your opponent is only going to be able to kick off effects in the present time zone to counteract what you do in the present time zone. So your selection or choice of time zone on your turn will have a very definite effect on your opponent and what he can do during your turn. So it's a very interesting mechanic, and I personally like that. It makes it very interesting because you have to really plan ahead as a player, and also during your turn really decide what's going to be the most benefit, to you as a player for what you're going to do. The other important part of this game to understand is the idea of a home time zone, or one time zone that's going to be your sort of strength for that turn, or until you get hit, or until things change, where it's going to be sort of your home zone, a home time zone where you really specialize in, so to speak. And that's determined by the top card of your life deck, or your life pile. That allows you to do one of two things. You can either play an additional card into that time zone, or you can draw an extra card at the end of your turn. So it's a benefit if you sort of play into that. Sometimes it's going to be beneficial for you to just go gung-ho and play into that time zone that you specialize in. Other times it may not, and you may need to deviate. So there is some level of strategy there, and I do appreciate that about the game. Combat. So here's where things get interesting, and where I think definitely was the flaw, or the error in the game design that caused a lot of problems. Alright, so as I pointed out, you have energy and substance. Now, the way it works with this game is they are separate numbers in terms of some characters will boost only substance, some will boost only energy, and some cards will affect only substance or only energy. So they are different in that way, and if someone plays a card that causes your energy to drop to 0, but you still have strength, then you're still in the game. But if both of those drop to 0 from some card effect or gameplay effect, then the character will be discarded. Let's say you play a flash card that drops energy and substance by 2 on a character, and they have a 2/2 or less on their stats, then that is going to matter. It's going to kill them. But when you get to combat, so if you have engaged as someone who's got a 3/2 versus someone with a a 3/2 versus someone who has a 2/2, you don't look at either or. You look at the substance and energy as a total number. So you look at the grand total. So you'd have 5 versus 4. And that's where some of the problem lies with the gameplay in terms of fan reaction to this. And I can see the issues with it and why people were not happy with that. Because it's sort of, when you get into combat, it sort of devalues any reason to have them separate. I mean, what's the point of having a separate number if you don't have one number for attack and one number for defense? If you're just going to add it all up into one clump sum number that you just simply compare at the end, then why have them separate? Why have 2 separate numbers? You know, so I can understand, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense logically when you think about it. So I can understand that criticism. As I said, the creatures only go into the time zones, so past, present, or future. Now I did point out that timeless color. The timeless means that they can play into any time zone. They're not restricted to past, present, or future. So they're really beneficial. They're really awesome. But you can't just stack a deck full of those. You do have a limit of 5 in play at any given time. You have a limit of 6 of any cards, so that includes creatures and or resource cards. You have a limit of 6 in any given time zone. So there's that limit as well. So you can't just stack an army of 20 in the past and then rip through your opponent. You have a limit of 6 cards, creatures and or resources in any given time zone. The last thing to mention on this is the support number, as you saw on the creature card as pointed out. Support number is really important in this game as well, because support allows you as a character to add to another character's overall stats. Now technically, because of just the weird functionality of how you have to be specific, except for when you overall compare in the combat, when you do this support, you have to clarify whether you're adding that support number to either energy or substance. But they will, like I said, it really doesn't matter in the long run in combat because you're looking at an overall number. So it doesn't really matter in the long run. But the point is you still have to specify whether you're adding it to energy or substance when you do the support number. And the support number on a character card is twofold. It will tell you how much support they can give if they support. So if they have a 2 support number, they can give 2 to another character or creature's substance or energy. And when they support, they will not add their numbers to attack or to the combat. You're going to exhaust them and add that support number to their overall combat by adding it to that creature's substance or energy. So that's what you're going to do. And it's, like I said, it's twofold. At the same time, the support number is how much support they can accept. So if someone has a 0 support number, they can't get help from anybody else. They can't accept or give support, so they're stuck with their stats as they are. But if they had a 2, like I pointed out earlier, then up to 2 characters can give their support numbers to this person, to this creature. So if I had a creature with support of 2, and then I had 2 other characters that has a support number, I could exhaust both of those to give both of their support numbers to that other creature's substance or energy, like I said. I like the game, I enjoy it, and I have fun playing it. Admittedly, are there problems or issues with the game? Yes. However, the pluses, as I said, it really captures the flair of the TV series. I mean, I feel definitely that when it delves so heavily and captures so specifically the concept of time zones in this game, with the past, present, and future, and with the TARDIS allowing doctors to move around and timeless creatures, it really plays with time and the concept of time. And I personally, I really enjoy that, and I think that it really lends to this sort of how do I put this? It really lends to a Doctor Who things happening in time feel, whether it's past, whether it's present, whether it's future. It's sort of this ebb and flow of time. I really like that, and I like that about the time zones, and I like that it makes you sort of have to strategize on, am I going to focus on the present, the past, the future, and those different options on where you're going to play your cards, and what are you going to focus on and really sort of play up. Are you going to play into your strength with your home time zone, or are you going to deviate? I find a lot of strategic value in that. That goes with the flair of the game, that goes with the flavor of the game, that really plays into the Doctor Who theme. So I really enjoy that. And you have a lot of cards that will allow you to do things with time zones. Like I said, the TARDIS will allow you to jump from time zone to another time zone. So they do play with those kind of time jumping aspects as well. So I enjoy the game. I love it. It is a harder game to get a hold of, similar to Spycraft and Mayhem. Those other games I reviewed, they are harder to get a hold of, especially since this was one set only, and it originally started in the UK. So it is harder to get. But if you can get it, and if you can, actually, there's a website where you can buy singles. Online, so there are resources to be able to actually get a hold of the game. But if you can get a hold of it, I would recommend it. I would recommend the game. I would recommend it with a caveat that do expect to have to deal with a very different game. So going into it, expect that again, you're dealing with very different game mechanics. Honestly, out of all the games that I've played, as a whole, as a collective whole, next to Overpower and Spycraft, this is the most different game that I've played. Different customizable card game, the most different that I've played. Really, that's different from the standard sort of magic template that we've seen a lot of games try to copy or to emulate. Now, don't get me wrong, the magic template is a very solid template for card games, for especially customizable card games. But I like the difference. I like the deviation. So again, it's very different. So if you're going to go into it, expect that. Understand that there will be some changes, some differences in strategy that you as a player coming into it will have to learn and adjust to and understand. So I highly recommend the game. So that's Doctor Who CCG, the customizable card game. And again, if you have questions, comments, please comment below, let me know. If there's any game that you, in any of these games that I've reviewed, if there's any recommendations that you'd like to see me review game-wise, then please let me know. If I can do it, I will do it. So again, I recommend, and there's the Doctor Who CCG. So Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.